But I thought then that before Google, we had something, at least my generation, that we call dictionaries. Do you know dictionaries? Yeah, book. These books like this. So I went back to the Oxford Dictionary, which is one of the best dictionaries for the English language, and I found this definition, that smart is having or showing a quick-witted intelligence. And this is the main definition under smart. But you know, the Oxford and all other dictionaries, they have a number of other definitions, and they say, okay, you know, if it is about a person, so it's someone that it's, or a place, it's a person or a place that is clean, neat, fashionable, upscale. If we are talking about a device, it's a device that is programmed so to have some kind of independent action or artificial intelligence, as we say. If it's about a behavior, it is a behavior that it showcases a quick or brisk manner. And you know, when I was showing all of these things, I thought that for me, smart was one and only thing. Smart was what my mom wanted me to be, because I remember my mom wanted me to be a smart boy. Did I become one? I don't know. But when we talk about smart, there's a big variety of terms that we have to deal with. So after my exercise with the dictionary, I went, of course, to Google and to Uncle Wiki, and I found this definition of a smart city. I'm not going to read it. It's on the internet. You can read it. And there are other definitions, very successful one, I think, from the European Commission, and a third one from the International Telecommunication Union, which is the United Nations body working on information and communication technologies. You will see I've bolded some words there, and I've put red in 2 words on resources and efficiency. Because in all these 3 definitions, and I can assure you, all the main definitions you will find about smart cities, they are addressing the issue of managing better natural resources. So the concept of resource efficiency, the idea on how we can manage better water, air, waste, energy, is at the core of the smart cities. And smart cities are directly connected with sustainable cities, which I'm not going to give a definition, but this is coming from something coming from the United Nations, from the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, on what are the components of a sustainable city. Of course, a sustainable city falls under the entire idea of sustainability, which has the 3 components: the economic, environmental, and social. Governance is an extremely important thing when it comes to the sustainability of cities as well. And on top of the smart and the sustainable, we have also the green cities. And when we do talk about a green city, you will see a lot of definitions saying that cities, green cities are the ones focusing on reducing environmental impact. So some scholars and some experts, they do say that the green cities represent the environment part of the sustainable cities. Some other definitions, they say that it's a starting point for building sustainable development, up to the idea that if you want to achieve sustainable development at the national level, you should start from the micro level, which is the cities. I would even say you might need to go in a much lower level, which is the neighborhoods, which is probably the families, which is the streets. And you will see some others that saying green cities is cities with big open green public spaces. And you will find a number of other definitions of what is a green city. So when I go usually to work with countries or cities, and one of the main work we are doing in the United Nations Environment Program is to assist countries and cities to develop sustainable plans, there's always questions about these definitions. And the countries are asking, what kind of cities we want, what the United Nations Environment Program want us to be. Do you want us to be smart cities, green, sustainable? Is smart, which is a very trendy term right now, equivalent to sustainable, or it's part of this. If we have these three concepts, the smart, green, sustainable, how are they connected? Is it that it's three different things that at one point could come together and find an area that a city could be at the same time smart, green, and sustainable? Is it that sustainable is the big picture and then smart and green are subsets of the sustainable? Or it is that, sustainable and green is something that comes together and then smart complements them? And the thing is that these are three combinations of the three cycles. Do the simple maths, you can make much more combinations of them. And each city, each country, each individual policymakers in the city might have another understanding of how these terms are connected. So here is where the confusion comes in terms of the definitions. And of course you will ask me, yes, but do you really need to focus on definitions? I think yes, because when we said, for example, yesterday in the last session of this conference that we would like to come up with some recommendations for cities, for smart cities, the first thing that a city will ask if would like to implement this recommendation is, okay, tell me what is a smart city first. But another thing is that, okay, we need the definitions in order to make policy agendas and to make plans. But is it the definition something that really matters to citizens? What people say when, for example, they go or they live in a city that they like. They will say, this is a beautiful city. They will say, this is a nice city, it's a clean city, it's a wonderful city. So the question is, does it matter if I live in a city that I love, it's beautiful, nice, clean, and wonderful? Does it really matter if I call it green, sustainable, or smart? I think it does not matter for the people, for the citizens. I don't think that citizens are saying that I want to be a smart, green, or sustainable city. But they do say that I want to be in a city that I can do specific things. I want to be in a city that first and foremost provides me the means to have a better daily life. I think that more than 2/3 of our time, not sleeping time, are spent working in the cities. So the daily life, what we are doing on a daily basis in cities, the simple things, the routines that define their daily life are the ones that they matter the most. It doesn't really matter if I have a city that has probably the best opera in the world and it has the best performances ever if I don't have good public transport to access this, or if I don't have roads to access this. People need clean air, efficient public transport, opportunities for leisure, learning experiences, and tens of other things. And I think that this is the first building block of what a smart city should first do, is to address the real needs of the people. And any kind of technological innovation and ICT technology that will be used for the smart cities to address these needs. And when I'm looking at the needs of the people, when I'm looking at the needs of the citizens, I must admit that the closest thing that it comes from me as a definition is the concept of sustainable cities. And this is why, or what is my opinion here, and of course it's just a single opinion, is that sustainability as a term is the much bigger term that encompasses the work we want to do in the cities in order to make them better. And we need to look probably not as three concepts that they can be mixed, but as a destination and then paths that we can achieve these destinations. So I'm looking not at three cycles anymore, but I'm looking at the sustainability of the city as the overall objective, which is redefined because, sustainability is not something stable. Sustainability is changing. Our perceptions our definitions, our expectations of what is a sustainable city is changing. So this is the big target, and there are specific paths, which could be the green city, the smart city, that they will lead us to sustainability. So these three aspects are not mutually exclusive, but at the same time, there's not so much need, I think, to find out if one contains the other or if not. And what I'm proposing here, that sustainable is the destination and the paths could be green, could be smart, could be green and smart together, could really solve a lot of the conceptual issues. So let me go to the part that we'll talk about what are the main opportunities for action and how we can probably try to redefine the aspect of smart for citizens. I see in the international agenda and what will happen in the next couple of years, three main opportunities. The one is the Sustainable Development Goals. I don't know how much familiar you're with the Sustainable Development Goals. I'll go in a slide later. The second is the Climate Change Conference in Paris, the COP21, and whatever agreement will come out of this conference. And the third is the so-called Habitat 3 conference. So in the next 5 to 6 minutes, I'll go in each one of these three specific aspects of my presentation. Sustainable Development Goals is probably is the outcome of the most inclusive and transparent process that the United Nations has ever put together to define the global agenda of development for the next 50 years, for tomorrow to 2030. The Sustainable Development Goals succeed what we used to call and what we call the Millennium Development Goals, that they started 15 years ago, and they're about to end December this year. And they have been defined, they have been developed with a process that included an extensive consultation that lasted for about 3 years now. It started after the so-called Rio +20 conference in Rio de Janeiro in 2012. And on 4th of August, we had the working group in the United Nations adopting the final document of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is submitted now to the General Assembly in a session on 25 to 27 September for adoption. The expectation is that the General Assembly will adopt the Sustainable Development Goals as they have been defined by the working group. There are 17 goals targeting poverty, food and hunger issues, water, energy, sustainable consumption and production, biodiversity, oceans, forests. It's probably one of the most ambitious global development agendas that humanity has put ever together. And what is important to understand is that cities will be needed, and all Sustainable Development Goals are relevant for the cities. And there's one of them, the Sustainable Development Goal 11, which is dedicated for the cities. So when it comes to the opportunity for the cities on the Sustainable Development Goals is first and foremost to try to implement the Sustainable Development Goal 11, which asks cities, asks us to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable, and of course contribute in all the others 16 Sustainable Development Goals. What is most important in the SDG 11 is not so much these two lines, but is the so-called targets, 10 targets that they are coming with this. This is a very abstract presentation of the targets, which are, again, I will not go in details. The full text is about one page, I think, almost. But you will see that the targets of the Sustainable Development Goal on cities is about what we talk the daily life of citizens and what it matters for citizens. It's about housing and basic services, sustainable transport, urbanization, cultural and natural heritage, behavior of the city against disasters, reduce the environmental impact, clean air, municipal and other kind of waste, green and open public spaces, development planning, resource efficiency, and sustainable and resilient buildings. So the targets are the most important things, and they will more or less give the main beacon on where the cities should be in 15 years from now. And here's my first attempt to try to redefine SMART, saying that SMART for cities, for me, starts to be achieving all targets of the Sustainable Development Goal 11 by 2030 and contributing to the other SDGs. So for me, if we want from now on to start calling a technology or a method or a policy one that it's a technology, method, or a policy for a smart city, it should be able to prove that it can contribute and it can support cities on achieving these targets of the Sustainable Development Goal 11. So the smart technologies, the policies, technologies, methods for smart cities should address all these issues of urban transport, of clean air, of resource efficiency, of green, sustainable and resilient buildings, and all of them. Second opportunity is the COP21, is the climate change conference in Paris. And there's a main question here. The question is, will cities have an increased responsibility and role on implementing what hopefully will be called the Paris Climate Agreement, the climate change agreement? I think nobody knows, because this will be defined by the talks in Paris. But there are some very strong signals indicating that it's quite probably that cities will be asked, or cities will demand themselves to have a bigger role and responsibility on tackling climate change. And one of the signals comes from a report that the United Nations Environment Programme published very recently, and it's called Climate Commitments of Subnational Actors and Businesses. So this is a report where UNEP made a quantitative assessment of the potential of climate change mitigation from different non-state actors, or as other experts call them, subnational actors. So you know that the climate change agreements and the climate change implementation and mitigation is entrusted to national governments. But we made a study and we tried to see, okay, what other actors are achieving and what is the potential? And this is what it came out. I mean, it's a 120-page study. Please Google it, download it, and read it. But if there's one thing that you could remember, is the following graph. Here is what we call mitigation potential for the subnational or the non-state actors. And you will see that the biggest mitigation potential lies with the cities. The second biggest with regions, which is what you call in this conference territories, and the third with companies and businesses. And you see how much the cities and regions, how huge the potential it is, even if you compare it with other very big sectors like agriculture, forestry, efficient lighting. The cities and territories, they are 4 or 5 or 6 times, they have a 4 or 5 or 6 times more mitigation potential. So it is more or less a signal that if we do want to win the fight in against climate change, cities and territories, and also the private sector, the companies, is the grounds to win this battle. So I think there are so many signals saying that you cannot ignore cities, you cannot ignore territories from any future implementation of a climate change agreement. And that's the big opportunity for the cities, to be ready to implement whatever will come out of Paris. So here's my second point on redefining SMART, which is SMART is maximizing the climate change mitigation potential of my city. If a technology or a policy should be called a technology and policy to help and achieve smart cities, it should maximize the mitigation potential. And the third opportunity is what I told you, the so-called Habitat 3 conference. The Habitat 3 conference is a big UN conference happening once every 20 years. And it's really a 1 to 20 years opportunity. And what this conference will do is to put together a new sustainable urban development agenda. It will take place on October 26 in Quito, and all countries of the United Nations will be together to secure and renew a political commitment for sustainable urban development. We don't know what exactly will come out of this conference, but there's going to be a concrete document coming out. There's a huge preparatory process that involves the development of different issue papers, I think about 20 issue papers, one of them focusing on the issue of smart cities and ICT. But this also opportunity, the opportunity to redefine the new sustainable urban development agenda, gives me my hint for the third and last proposal on how we can redefine smart for the cities, which is smart actually is to define the future of sustainable urban development plans and models. So smart is not supporting and making more efficient the business as usual way, but smart is actually the one that it will make business unusual for cities to become sustainable. So in a nutshell, I think that what is extremely important for every technology, for every policy, for every plan that is focusing on smart or green or sustainable cities is to serve the needs of the citizens in a way that it will make their life much better and in a way that it will contribute to the achievement of these global agendas that they are coming from the Sustainable Development Goals, the climate change negotiations, and of course the upcoming Habitat 3. And this is what we do in the United Nations Environment Programme. We support countries and cities to achieve these objectives. Thank you very much for your attention.